stand and deliver. Claude Duval, James McLean, Dick Turpin, these are just a few of the dandy highwaymen whose names are familiar to us. But between the end of the English civil wars in the 17th century and the first decades of the 19th century, highway robbery was endemic in Britain. It was a crime wave that lasted 170 years.
I'm going to take a look at the tools of the trade, the horse and the pistol. And I'm going to look at the part popular fiction has played in glorifying these so-called gentlemen of the road. And I'm going to find out how society finally got the scourge of highway robbery under control.
Newspaper after newspaper, after report. There are hundreds and hundreds of cases happening all the time.
For all their airs and graces, highwaymen were not debonair and lovable rogues. They were armed robbers who frequently resorted to violence.
And this is the true story of Highwaymen.
The first question is, how do you actually hold up a coach? Obviously, I've had to stand in the path to stop it, and the coachman had no option but to stop. He can't come smashing into me, or we'll just have a tangled, mangled mass of injured animals. He has to stop and depend on outgunning me. And therein lies the problem, because if I move away, then there's no one to stop him. He can just gallop off to safety. Who's going to carry out the robbery? I can't do it on my own. I need at least one other person to have a pistol on the coachman or to be holding one of the horses. If this were a male coach, then I need somebody with a pistol on the guard. And of course, in order to effect the robbery, I need a pistol on the inside folk to make them surrender their valuables. What you need is a gang, and highwaymen operated in gangs.
The highwayman Francis Jackson has left us several pointers concerning the ways in which a highwayman went about his business. Whilst languishing in Newgate jail awaiting execution, he wrote his recantation. Published in 1674, it was a popular success, full of tricks of the trade.
One of his tips was to put pebbles in the mouth to disguise the voice. He also said that a highwayman should have a large selection of wigs and beards and occasionally use an eye patch. He also confirmed that highwaymen worked in gangs. He said that new members of the gang had to swear an oath to say that if caught, they would stay silent. Jackson also gave a tip to travellers, saying, don't travel on a Sunday. Highwaymen like to operate on a Sunday. The roads are quieter. It's great for highwaymen.
Local parishes were required to compensate travellers who were robbed by highwaymen on their roads. However, that law didn't apply on a Sunday, and so on a Sunday, local law enforcement took the day off.
One of Jackson's other ruses was that he would ride up to a group of travellers, and if he identified there was somebody among them who wasn't really part of the group but had joined them for safety, he'd sidle up to that person and say, I know these men. I overheard them talking in the inn last night. You should hang back with me. I'll look after you. And he would win the confidence of this person and get him to hold back. Then a little way down the road, his associates would ambush them. And they'd rehearsed a mock fight, and they would fight, and Jackson would sword fight with them, and pistol shots would go off, and the accomplices would win, and Jackson would say to his new companion, they've got us, we're going to have to surrender our money and hand over everything, which they did. And of course then later Jackson would meet up with his accomplices and pocket all the money. Highwaymen had all the false charm of a confidence trickster, as well as having the pretensions of a gentleman.
The highwayman Claude Duval, a Frenchman who started life as a stable boy, came to England in the service of English royalists, returning after the restoration of Charles II in 1660. He soon left them for a life on the road. Always dressed elegantly and fashionably, Duval famously commanded his victims to surrender their valuables with impeccable politeness.
One story that was reported in the London Gazette, he held up a coach on Hounslow Heath. That's where present-day Heathrow Airport sits. Inside the coach were 4 young ladies, and between them they had £400. And then one of the ladies started playing on the flageolet, a very popular instrument at the time, a bit like a tin whistle, a flute-type instrument. And Duval doffed his cap and had all the airs and graces that we associate with highwaymen, and he said, "That is a very fine tune. If you come and dance a coranto with me, I will only take 100 of your £400. And the press reported it, and the story was popular with people at the time as if he was this wonderful, gallant, romantic gentleman. But if you think about it, what he did with his gang, there's a man there with a pistol and a man there with a knife at the horse's neck and another man there with a pistol. He forced a young woman to come out and dance with him at gunpoint. That is not the action of a hero. That is the action of a sadist. That is an act of terror.
Even so, in his day, Duval enjoyed a cult following. Highwaymen broke the bonds of a class-ridden society whilst simultaneously aping the manners of their masters just by daring to do so. To an admiring public, highwaymen had the courage to escape the drudgery, misery and injustice that was the lot of most people. To their victims, highwaymen were common thieves who frequently inflicted grievous bodily harm. In many regards, they are related to the medieval outlaw, the pirate, and the desperados of the Wild West. In America, highwaymen were known as road agents. It seems that society needs its villainous heroes.
The archetypal highwayman is always mounted on a fine steed. Black Bess was every bit as famous as her nefarious rider, Dick Turpin. Perhaps it's something about the innate nobility of horses that imbues their riders, however wicked their deeds, with an undeserved grandeur and nobility. What was required was a fast horse. Even before the days of the horse patrols and an organised police, there were militia setting up a hue and cry. A highwayman had to be able to get away at a fast gallop, and that required a horse of quality. Stolen horses, although they were used, were not a good option. In those days, horses had brands and clipped ears. They were very easily identifiable. Many highwaymen were caught because the horse they'd stolen had been identified. Horses like this require grains and forage. Horses like this require care and horseshoes. Horses like this are kept in stables. Highwaymen depended on a network of stable lads to keep them supplied with good quality, fast horses.
Equally essential for the highwayman was his pistol. It was just after the English civil wars in the 17th century that the highwayman appeared as a recognizable cultural figure, with mask, horse, and pistol.
It was the technological development of the pistol that enabled the highwayman to emerge. It was with the pistol, for the first time, that a horseman could ride up to somebody with a preloaded gun and shoot. Developed in the 16th century was the wheel-lock pistol, like this. This would be wound up with a spanner, clockwork mechanism. You pull the trigger, that spins around, creating a spark with this iron pyrites. It was ingenious, it was effective, but it was also a little bit slow and cumbersome and not hugely reliable. By the end of the Civil War, however, the flintlock pistol had emerged. Much lighter, much more compact, and much more reliable. You put the charge and the ball down there and ram it in, and then you bring it to half cock, and you put some priming powder in the pan, like that. This is called the frizzen. It's a steel plate. You close that and bring it to full cock. When this flint strikes the frizzen, it will create sparks. And those sparks ignite the charge and the gun goes back. And pistols, of course, came in many shapes, sizes and prices, but none of that was a problem for the highwayman because mostly they'd be stolen. He would have holster pistols like this, so a pistol that can go into a holster worn in front of your saddle. You could get at least 4 of these slung in front of your saddle. He might have a few belt pistols. You see, this has got a hook at the back, so it just tucks nicely into your belt, and you know, you could get 1, 2, 3, 4. The highwayman would be bristling with pistols because they're all one-shot weapons. Because he stole his pistols, he often had very, very fine pistols, like dueling pistols. This was another factor that enhanced that reputation of highwaymen, of being raffish gentlemen. This particular pair, which are dueling pistols, are very interesting indeed. They have been lent to us by a relative of the man who arrested the last highwayman to be hanged in England, Robert Snooks, in 1802. And the story is that Robert Snooks was a highwayman operating in the London area in Hertfordshire. He fled up north to Yorkshire, and the relative of the man who owns these arrested him and confiscated these pistols. Snooks was sent back to where he'd committed his crime, to Boxmoor, just outside Berkhamsted, and hanged. But on his way to the gallows, there was a thronging, jostling crowd, and Snooks turned to the crowd and said, "There's no need to hurry. The fun can't start until I get there." It was the quintessential piece of gallows humour.
Hemel Hempstead is a post-war new town located on what was once Boxmoor Heath. It was here that Snooks's body was interred after his hanging. A memorial stone was set up nearby over 200 years later.
Having a pistol levelled at your head or your chest was intimidating enough, certainly intimidating enough to make you surrender your valuables. But there was another threat to being shot by a pistol, because, you know, there was a reasonable chance you'd survive a shot from a pistol. But the idea of having your clothing, your bacteria-ridden clothing, driven deep into the wound, so you would die of an agonizing infection later, that was far more scary. Take a look at this. Look at this. You can see how this has gone in. Doesn't look very much, but if we untie the bag, if we take the bag down, if I look at that, you can see fibres have gone deep into the wound. That's the real killing power of a flintlock pistol. We pull the bag down, you can really see the trajectory of the ball through the body, and all the way at the back here, my goodness, right at the back here, there's actually more. I can get my finger in. There's actually more fibres this deep into the body. It means the ball's gone right through. So it was sitting at this angle. It should be over here somewhere. And in fact, there it is. And that is the other aspect of a flintlock ball. You get this extremely unpleasant, jagged lead ball inside the body. This is a weapon to be feared.
Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.